Hello, everybody, and welcome back to JFK, the final investigation. This is going to be episode 10. Don't exactly have the title for this one yet, but what we're covering today is sexual abuse through U.S. government history. It's going to start off covering JFK's investigation into slavery and sex crimes in Saudi Arabia, and we're going to cover a couple other cases in the United States here, particularly Epstein and some accusations that have been made against the Rockefellers and the ties between the Epsteins and the Rockefellers. I have with me again today author and friend Richard James DeSocio. How you doing today, Richard?
All right, good to see you, Mark.
Awesome, great to have you back. So let's jump into this. So Richard actually was the one that originally pointed this out to me, JFK's investigation into the Saud family. And basically, what was going on is slavery was legal in Saudi Arabia. And there were things like, concubines and all kinds of rumored sexual abuse. There was documentation in newspapers everywhere. And what Kennedy did was argued that, essentially the relationship with the United States can't continue in the way that it's continuing with Saudi Arabia supporting slavery and all these sexual abuses that were going on. And this goes back to before Kennedy. 1956 to 1962, there was a British journalist named John Laffin who actually personally witnessed a slave auction in a city called, let me see if I can pronounce this right, Djibouti in 1956, involving more than 200 Africans. Later research says that many of the buyers were Arabian slave traders intending to move the captives onto Arabian markets. So sex trafficking basically is what they were, slave trafficking is what they were doing. And many of these people went on to be concubines and sex slaves, and sure, there was all kinds of bad stuff going on there. So this guy Laffin continued on 1960 to 1963, exposing the slavery. And in 1961 and 62, in Britain's Sunday Pictorial, he published a series of depicting these auctions of Sudanese slaves in, I don't know if I how to pronounce this, is it Jeddah, Saudi Arabia? Forgive me there on that one. This is very big in the whole context of JFK because these slave auctions were happening inside Saudi Arabia while Kennedy was president. So also in 1961 in Egypt, there was a reported case of an African chief who had fled Mali after being accused of selling men, women, and children traveling into the Hajj into Saudi Arabia. And lastly, I haven't even read this part yet. John Osman, does that name ring a bell to you? Okay,
Sorry.
Richard, okay. And another British journalist who was sent to Saudi Arabia and wrote an article series titled Slavery Lives On. And scores of people had escaped slavery, and all this reporting covered all this. So Kennedy wanted this to all end, and you can add some color to this, Richard. But Saudi Arabia was a major oil producing nation, and the Rockefellers certainly had ties to Saudi Arabia. Correct, Richard?
Correct.
Can you
The
add?
Rockefellers, did I cut you off?
Yeah,
The
no, no, go ahead.
Rockefellers discovered oil in Bahrain in 1930. This is a little history you have to understand. The ties with the conflict that's going on now with the U.S.-Israeli siege on Iran. They struck oil. The Rockefellers struck oil in Bahrain in 1930. Now, we're in the Persian Gulf here.
And can you speak
Okay.
up just a tad bit, Richard? Just a tad bit.
Uh, can you hear me
Much
better?
better. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I got to get a little closer to the mic, I think.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm talking about Bahrain. The Rockefellers struck oil in Bahrain in 1930. Okay, well, the topography of Bahrain, flat desert, was the same as the topography. Well, forget it. You know what I'm
Topography.
saying? Topography, yeah.
Yeah.
No, of the Arabian Peninsula. But the Arabian Peninsula is much bigger. So they said, maybe there's oil over there. So they went over there, and they basically, it's very interesting because the history is vast and ties in every direction. But they took 365, 365,000 square miles of Arabian Peninsula. They got it for a concession of $1,500 a month. Okay. Okay. Who
Wow.
was involved in it? Well, the British. See, they were in that area. The British, um, actually, was Kim Philby's father. You know, Kim Philby, the double agent, the MI6 double agent with the KGB, his father.
Mhm.
You know, you get into the world of double agents, it gets very murky. Well, his father and an executive from Standard Oil of California, which the Rockefellers owned like 10% of it outright, they made the deal with the Saud over there, and then they struck oil. But what happened? One of the problems that they had was, this goes back to the slavery thing, was before the Rockefellers are willing to commit to exploration in Saudi Arabia, was these tribes were all fighting each other. All these Arab tribes came together to fight the Turks and defeat the Turks. But then they couldn't rule by themselves. They couldn't get along amongst themselves. So then they all started fighting with each other. So what the Rockefellers did was, well, we can't go in if these tribes are all fighting each other. We got to give somebody supremacy in here. So they backed the Chase Bank, the Rockefeller Bank backed King Saud and his tribe, basically, and they basically took supremacy over the whole Saudi Arabian peninsula. And then the Rockefellers came in. And shortly after 1932, thereafter they got control through the Saud family. All those Persian Gulf countries are nothing but vassal states of the Rockefellers and Winston Churchill. But they went in there and then they struck oil big time.
That's crazy, Richard.
And
So basically,
yeah.
the Rockefellers put the Sauds in place.
Well, the Rockefellers are part owners of Aramco.
Right.
Aramco was originally Standard Oil of California. It was called Caltech. It was a merger between Standard Oil of California and Texaco. See, when they went and explored, now they explored, they expanded it to become Aramco, which involved their main company, ExxonMobil, and they all jumped into it, and it became Aramco. The Rockefellers, well, who knows? The Saudi family owns 50% of Aramco. So how much do the Rockefellers own?
Right.
Okay, so when the Rockefellers talk about OPEC, they're always pointing their finger at OPEC. Well, the Rockefellers are, Saudi Arabia is the dominant force in OPEC. Well, the Rockefellers own Aramco, or a big chunk of it. So so the Rockefellers are not part of Aramco?
It's like Game of Thrones. Have you seen Game of Thrones, by the way?
Sorry, I haven't.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because they have all these countries and they have what they call the Iron Bank, which funds all these wars, and they're, you know, really the ones that run everything. So it's very true to actual history. But yeah, it's a pretty clear pattern, and um, obviously the Rockefellers would be concerned if the United States was going after the Saudi Arabia government, and what was going on there could potentially affect business, correct?
Well, what happened was, we can go back to FDR,
Yeah.
okay, right about the close of World War II, or at least the hostilities. He met with Ivan Saud in the Middle East, and he shook hands. That's all it was, a handshake. And he says, we'll recognize your supremacy in the Arabian Peninsula, if you guarantee us all the oil we want, and don't give oil to anybody out like the Russians or anybody, just give it to us or sell it to us. Well, don't forget the Rockefellers they're controlling Roosevelt's mouth there. You know, they're pulling the strings. And it was just a handshake. And these people stick to their word. They stick to their word. And then Eisenhower, then the Saud family came to the official dinner with Eisenhower. Eisenhower did the same thing, handshake. And yeah, give us all the oil we need. We'll represent your supremacy in the Saudi Arabia. Handshake. Truman went along with it begrudgingly, maybe because he was a Democrat. But no, when it came to Kennedy, these articles were circulating, and not only about the slavery, but also they were bringing up the Rockefeller name. That, hey, the Rockefellers are partners with the Saudi Arabia, with the Saud family. You know, the royal monarchs over there, so they're involved in this too. So who are their partners? Slave owners and people who are carrying out acts of torture, and they were taking young boys and castrating them for maybe for their pleasures, sodomy. And then when these young boys grew up and became men, they were using them to guard their concubines and their harems. And they have like 50 wives, so they got to keep an eye on 50 wives. So who would you rather trust? Who would you trust more than anybody? A castrated male. You don't have to worry about anything there. Right. So that's what was going on. So Kennedy, when excuse me, I'm getting carried away. But when Kennedy met in the White House, they had an official dinner, and Crown Prince Faisal, who was assassinated in 1975, there was an official dinner or something in Washington, but then Faisal met in private with JFK. Okay, JFK built this little, I say little, but it was in the woods of Virginia, just outside Washington. He built this little home there so Jackie Kennedy could ride horses. And he met with Faisal, who was a year away from becoming King Faisal. And when Faisal pulled up to the house, there was nobody to meet him. Not even open the door for him. I mean, Kennedy's going to say, I'm not opening the door for this guy. This guy's a slave master and a torturer. I'm not opening no door for this guy. Well, you can get the messaging, okay?
Right.
So Faisal had to knock on the door. This is the guy who's soon to be king. He's knocking on Kennedy's door. Who answers the door? The First Lady, Jacqueline Kennedy. And King Faisal was like, well, not king yet, but Faisal was like, Mr. President, where's your security? Where's your guards? They could kill you. And Kennedy said, you could have 100 guards. If they want to get to you, they're going to get to you.
Right.
Well, anyway, cut to the chase here. Kennedy said, I want you, if you don't stop this stuff, this torture, Kennedy put human rights up front on the table. He says, if we don't resolve this issue, I'm going to have my brother, Attorney General, we're going to break up Aramco. We're going to go after the oil oligarchy if you don't clean this act up. Well, this was 1962, by the way.
Right.
I think September 1960. So anyways, I mean, the Rockefellers knew this. This stuff was in the works anyways. They knew it anyways. So they gave the Rockefellers plenty of time to kill Kennedy, to plot to kill Kennedy, because this is the biggest, Saudi oil is the biggest treasure trove on the planet. And the Rockefellers had the keys to it. They were not about to give up the keys. You follow me? So, yeah, that would be a big motive in killing Kennedy. And then I'm also learned recently they were also threatening the Shah, questioning his authority. Well, why would you not question his authority when he was put in by a Rockefeller-backed coup? He wasn't, voted in by the people. And then they installed a death squad, terror squad, to, keep anybody who threatened his power over there. They were tortured, see? So these Rockefellers are not nice people. Here's some of the stuff they were doing over there. And here's something, SAVAK, called Scientific Training to Prevent Unwanted Deaths from Brute Force. See, in other words, they don't want to kill you, but they want to torture the hell out of you. Bastinado, sleep deprivation, excessive solitary confinement, glaring searchlights, standing in one place for hours on end, nail extraction, snakes, favored for use with women. These are nice people the Rockefellers are business partners with. Electric shocks with cattle prods, often into the rectum. Oh, cigarette burns, sitting on hot grills, acid drops into nostrils, near drowning, mock executions, and an electric chair with a large metal mask to muffle screams which amplified them to the victim. Prisoners were also humiliated by being raped, urinated on, and forced to stand naked. These are Rockefeller. This was the SAVAK. Well, this is the same thing the Saudi family was doing. You can imagine. And added to people's, castrating young boys. You can imagine the torture. And these are all vassal states of the Rockefellers.
Right.
Okay. And actually, Dulles and Schwarzkopf Sr. helped organize the SAVAK in Iran. So this just mirrors what was going on in Saudi Arabia. So anyways,
So I'd like to take a quick minute and fast forward to, I think this case, I mean, I guess it covered the 80s and 90s. It's called the Franklin case. There's a book by a man named Nick Bryant, and it resulted in what was called the Franklin Committee. And there was a gentleman, a researcher named Gary Caradori, and he supposedly had evidence of this sexual abuse, and it was sexual abuse that was occurring in the Midwest, and it involved travel to Washington, D.C., and was supposedly tied to U.S. politicians. So what happened to Gary is he had these pictures with him that were evidence, and his plane blew up with his 8-year-old son on it. No surprise there, Richard, right?
Yeah. A
He
lot
was,
of plane crashes in this story.
yep, he was hired by the Franklin Committee to investigate the case. It was involving Nebraska foster care, and these kids were sent to the East Coast for sex abuse. The grand jury ended up actually indicting the victims and determining that there was no sex trafficking. So they actually punished the victims and sentenced them to prison. And a couple of these brave victims refused to, excuse me, they refused to change their story. It's heartbreaking, absolutely just awful. Um, so these kids were they were abused and they were punished for it on top of it. So it's just double abuse. So what we're seeing here is a pattern of this sexual abuse on a global basis. And, it also ties into what's going on with Epstein right now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but why don't you get right into the whole Epstein Rockefeller thing, and we'll play that video in a minute too.
Well, first of all, I've always suspected, going way back, that Epstein, and what I believe was going on here in the greatest story of Epstein, is, remember in that video, who did Epstein call out? 2 words: David Rockefeller.
Right.
He didn't call out Israel. He didn't call out Bob Maxwell. He didn't call out the Messiah. Who did he call out? David Rockefeller. Okay, right. Epstein, all right, was on the board of the Rockefeller Institute / University, which goes way back to John D. Rockefeller. And it's part of a massive complex, medical complex, that extends all the way from, I'll say 65th Street, like 9 blocks north. And it's one after another. You go to the next one, it's the Cornell Presbyterian Hospital. Well, Rockefeller is hugely connected with Cornell University. It goes on, and a lot of those names I'm not even, but it's a huge medical complex. Well, Epstein was on the board, asked by David Rockefeller to sit on the board. And who was in the boardroom with him? Henry Kissinger's wife.
Wow.
Okay, well, Kissinger was Nelson Rockefeller's right-hand man. That's putting it mildly. He was actually Nelson Rockefeller's top henchman. Well, Stalin had henchmen. Hitler had henchmen. Well, Nelson Rockefeller was going to have henchmen. So also in the room was who? Brooke Russell Astor. She was a Russell, by the way, which Russell because of the opium cartels. And, and the Astors were and I showed you this book earlier, Roosevelt Secret Wars. Okay, it's written by Joe Persico, was Nelson Rockefeller's speechwriter as governor and as vice president. Although when he was vice president, there wasn't much speech writing, but this is the history of the CIA. And it goes back to 2 families, the Astors and the Roosevelts, who were both what? Dope smugglers, opium smugglers. So the CIA was built by people who were opium smugglers. That's another story. So you got Brooke Astor, who inherited $1 billion foundation from her husband. Okay, she was titular head of it, but actually, in truth, it was David Rockefeller running it all for her. So this Epstein is in the boardroom here. Now, I believe what David Rockefeller was doing here was setting up a operation to carry out assassination by blackmail, or even to carry out basically control, you know, for political control in this country and around the world, carrying out acts of blackmail and alert. It's basically they're creating a golden triangle, golden mousetrap to lure people of high stations in life to come into this mousetrap and be set up, and then have dirt on them.
Right. So let me interject
and then
there.
they can hold them. A lot of this was what J. Edgar Hoover was doing.
Right. Yes. Yeah, he did all kinds of stuff like that.
And I'll tell you something. I sorry for interrupting me.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you. I'm sorry for me interrupting you there. But here's the thing. I get carried away on this stuff, okay? It's hard for me to kid him.
Yeah.
I'm now realizing why Earl Warren, okay, changed. You know, Johnson called Earl Warren and said, Chief Justice, hey, you want to run this commission for me to investigate the death of an American president? Earl Warren said, no way. Separation of powers, can't do it. Well, he was right. Warren was standing up for the Constitution. Next thing we heard, Earl Warren standing in the Oval Office on his hands or crying to Lyndon Johnson. Well, what happened? I know what happened. Hoover had a lot of files on Earl Warren, blackmail files, dirt files, because he was governor of California for 8 years and attorney general for at least 8 years. So how much dirt did they accumulate on Warren before they made him the Chief Justice, the holy Chief Justice? See, that's why he changed. And if it wasn't for that, if they didn't have that dirt on Earl Warren, we would have never had a Warren Commission. Or at least one the public would have believed, because they put supposedly the saint Chief Justice in charge of this thing, so people bought it.
Right.
That's why this dirt is so important. Now look what they're doing. They're bringing down royalty in England. And this ties to the Profumo case too, which involved who? The Astors, Lord Astor. I'm going to let you talk a little bit.
Yeah, so what I just want to say is, there might be multiple levels to this. I mean, just going to the island itself, might not be a crime. There might be people that only did that. Doubtful that that's a big number, but I think one thing that, maybe people misconceive, and tell me if you think I'm wrong on this, is, they think the politicians are holding back all this stuff on the Epstein case, which you're saying is that it's really not the politicians, it's the people that control the politicians that are not wanting these files to be released because they give up all their control over the politicians. Would that be a fair assessment?
Absolutely. It's the politicians. It's the big money interest. I call it the Rockefellers, but the big money interests that are holding these politicians. They're pretty much holding them on puppet strings. And, we're a representative government. Right. Well, actually, we're a representative government by people who have great money and wealth. They're the ones that are being represented.
Exactly. Let's play the Epstein video. Let's see if this works here. This is the first time I've ever done this. So let me know if you're hearing this, Richard, when I play it. So I'm going to share. Okay. So let's
How did a guy like you get on the board of a blue blood, internationally known, hard research, Nobel Prize winners all over the place? How do they pick a guy like you, a trader or basically some guy from Bear Stearns?
Good question. So I was asked to be on the board of Rockefeller. And I think I was on the board of Rockefeller. There was a money manager who said, Rockefeller needs someone with financial expertise because the university is growing and there's lots of new things. You have to, again, we go back to the original discussion the last time. Up until the mid 80s or sort of mid 70s, the most important thing was your name. If you were Rockefeller, you already were considered to be brilliant. If you were head of General Motors, it was your reputation. It was who you knew and who your family was. What was your character? And then in the mid 70s, basically, if you remember, you probably had a calculator. It was very advanced in those days to have a Texas Instrument calculator, where by putting in the numbers, it would multiply for you to do square roots. And that was the first thing. Everyone who had a calculator was already advanced on Wall Street. A simple almost like your account. The most important parts of business were really now going to calculations. So it's not only mathematics, but it's things that could be calculated. Reputation couldn't be calculated. I could give you, are you a 10 on a reputation scale, an 8? What does it mean to have a measurement of your reputation? We'll get to that later. But places like Rockefeller needed someone to say, look, we're entering a different world where numbers and the numbers of companies, portfolio management was going to be balanced. It was going to be statistical. Jeffrey, could you come on the board? Potentially sit on the finance committee, Nancy Kissinger and a bunch of other people. And David Rockefeller and I got along very well. He was this unbelievable human being. Respectful to everyone. He introduced his driver as his colleague, not his driver. He would never say, this is my driver. He said, it's my colleague. And David started to explain to me world politics. So David would say, Jeffrey, money is going to be sort of the most important things. People don't understand money. You seem to have this knack for money. I said to David, tell me about your life. What was the worst and the best part of your life? So David said, when I grew up, everyone knew I was a Rockefeller. They didn't know that my father told me he would not leave me a dime, no money. But every time we went out to eat, me and my 5 friends in school, they would leave me the bill. They would expect me to pick up the check because I was a Rockefeller. And he said, I was chairman of Chase Bank. And he said, I remember like it was yesterday, one of the headlines in Time magazine said, David, please fire yourself. So he thought that there was a world that existed that would be a combination of both politics and business and leadership. What do I mean? He formed something called the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission is some spooky stuff. People said it was some of the people that, the Illuminati, there's some mystery about it, people that ran the world. It was politicians, but David said most countries, the politicians get elected for 4 years or 8 years, separate from the royal families in England or in the Middle East. Someone's there for 4 years and then they're not there anymore. The most important people to have stability and consistency would be businessmen. So he formed this Trilateral Commission of businessmen and politicians from 3 major continents. So it was the North Americans, the Europeans, and the Asians. So he said to me, would you like to be on the Trilateral Commission? Now, I was 30 years old, 32 years old. I said, great. And he said, well, you have to fill out this application so they have your bio. And I looked at the list of people, and it was Bill Clinton, former president of the United States, Paul Volcker, every great leader in America, the Asians, the Japanese, and with a very long description of their history. And they asked me to fill in what I would like to have written. And I wrote Jeffrey Epstein, comma, just a good kid, which I thought was funny. Nobody else did. So answer to your question, at that time, I recognized around the world that monies and currencies were not really well understood. But again, it was only numbers.
Okay. So there we go. There's something there that I picked up very subtly, and this is a shame on me for this. He actually mentioned the driver there.
Well, we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
But his whole whatever he talked about has to all be, that's just a blur what he's saying. You got to qualify what he's saying.
Correct.
You got to clarify what he's saying. First of all, David Rockefeller did not select him because he's a Texas Instrument calculator. Okay,
Right.
Not at all. All right. The Rockefellers have a massive network of connections and influence. Okay, they have a whole army of brain trusters in every sector, whether it be petroleum, whether it be law, whether it be banking, it goes on and on and on. Okay, he was not a brain truster. Paul Volcker was a member of the inner circle, but Paul Volcker was their top financial brain truster. Okay, this guy's no brain truster at all. Right. All these people that sit on boards, this is how the Rockefellers were able to kill Kennedy. Okay, they sit on these boards, these powerful boards, because they're rubber stamps, they're butt kissers to the Rockefellers, and they're what they call useful idiots. What does Nancy Kissinger know about running a foundation or running a medical institute? What does Brooke Astor know about this stuff? Okay, they're ass kissers to the Rockefellers. They're the useful idiots. They'll do whatever the Rockefellers tell, what their stand-ins, and they're told how to vote and what to say and what to do. So that's what he is there. Now, I think he got into this thing, why he was recommended to David Rockefeller, is because he was in charge of, with Bernard Stern, we know his reputation. He must have been in charge of what they call hospitality, okay? This is huge in the Rockefeller world. It goes way back to the little greenhouse on K Street, which involved Teapot Dome, which we've talked about in the past. But this is generation after president after president after president, something specific, okay? And what they mean by hospitality is they're providing to clients, okay? They're providing service, they're providing parties, they're providing top shelf alcohol, they're providing Dom Perignon champagne, they're providing jumbo shrimp, they're providing luxurious living styles and stuff, and also pleasures of the flesh, whatever it might be. Is it little boys? Okay, is it little girls? You know, could be. Whatever these people need to bring in business, correct? So that's why he was brought into this thing, to be in charge of hospitality. If you go back to the day before Kennedy was killed, Pepsi Cola was running hospitality in Dallas, Texas. There was a convention going on for soft drink battlers, okay? Pepsi Cola was running hospitality, okay? They were bringing in, who was there? Jack Ruby, Richard Nixon, okay? They're giving gifts, they're giving alcohol, they're giving whatever to guests to bring in business, okay? This fits into a pattern that's centuries old. That's why he was brought in. David Rockefeller was setting up this big blackmail. Well, they had to replace somebody, had to replace J. Edgar Hoover with dirt and dirt collection. So we'll set people up. And Jeffrey, you'll be in charge of it. Because the Rockefellers know they could spend $1 billion in case when they kill Kennedy and their Operation MKUltra. They'll spend $1 billion. Of course, using that their money, it's the taxpayers' money. They work it through blacked out accounts and things and a collection of foundations that they run to take down one person. If you take down the right person, that could change the course of civilization for years. Case in point, JFK, okay? So that's worth having a whole Air Force of B-52 bombers. You take out the right person. That's what the whole thing was about.
So here's something really interesting. So the Franklin case with this sex abuse, it basically, the timeline was around June of 1988, and it kind of ended towards the late 90s. When did Epstein's crimes
80s
start? Right.
When he started with David Rockefeller. Well, we started with David Rockefeller.
Right, but they started getting reported and everything in the summer of 96. What I'm saying, it's almost like there's an overlap where one was ending. And
exactly.
Here's
if the police raid a brothel on the east end of town, 6 months later they're going to open up on the west end of town. Okay, right. It's the same thing with these people. Just like MKUltra, we're going to end it. They never ended it. They change how they operate.
Right.
Listen. He mentioned his driver. Okay, right. We talked about this. Woman abused at David Rockefeller's home as a child. Oh. That's David Rockefeller home. I've been there, street side.
Yep.
That's not actually his home. That's actually the stable house. The home is further away. You can't see it from the road, but it looks like Thomas Jefferson's home. And this chauffeur, well, Was this the guy, the chauffeur that David Rockefeller, his colleague, that David Rockefeller introduced to Jeffrey Epstein? Was this the same chauffeur? You know the story. Here's the lawsuit,
Right.
right? We discussed this. Here it is. Woman abused at David Rockefeller's home. It was his chauffeur. Was it the same chauffeur that David introduced to Jeffrey Epstein? Listen, the chauffeur is part of the trafficking.
Right.
Okay? They have to go and pick these girls up. I mean, when David Rockefeller was driving around with this child here, Annika, right?
Yeah. And
Right, here's the picture, right?
The driver was named Luis Oliveira, by the way.
Yeah, but Epstein never mentioned his name.
Right, of course.
We don't know if it was the same guy or not. We could
Right.
do a lot more research, right?
Right. That'd be a hell of a piece of
You're
information.
picking up David Rockefeller, an adult married man with a child, and you're going from houses to hotels to jet planes to yachts. Come on, he doesn't suspect. He's got to be part of the whole deal.
Right.
Why would he introduce him to Jeffrey Epstein?
Right.
And I'll tell you another thing about the Rockefellers. You only see these people once.
Yep.
See, what they do is, remember, I told you, there's always a third person in the room. I think that third person was the driver. See, he's probably never, I don't know how many times he saw David. He did mention Henry Kissinger, though.
Right.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe that's the only saw David Rockefeller. Well, it's all you see Rockefellers once. I can read you something in his book here about how the Rockefellers, the grandfather did this. Okay. The grandfather did this. Let me read it to you. If I can find, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but here it is. This is what Rockefeller. This is the grandfather. This was the grandfather. His kids learned. This was their going to bedtime story. This was basically the last will and testament of John Rockefeller. But it had nothing to do with money. It was all about power and how power would be transferred after his death. Okay. Here, this is it. Listen to this one sentence. He's talking about Mr. Samuel Mather. This was the formation of U.S. Steel, America's biggest corporation. Okay, Mr. Samuel Mather of Cleveland. He spent only a few minutes in the house, during which time we gave him the order for about $3 million worth of ships, and this was the only time I saw him. This was the birth of U.S. Steel. He was in the house for 2 minutes. You know why? It's plausible denial. So what Rockefeller is going to do is, oh, sorry here. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I hit my, what do you call it here? Hope I can bring you guys up again. Oh, my God. Oh, here, I'm
It
sorry.
might just mess
We're
up.
back.
there.
Okay, sorry.
There we go.
Okay. See, what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, here's my go-between. Whatever.
Right.
You know, Mr. Jones, Mr. Smith. For now on in the future, when this man talks, it's me talking. And if you want to message me, you tell Mr. Smith Jones, and he'll bring me the message. That's all you're going to see of Rockefeller. And that's why it's so difficult to understand why the Rockefellers killed JFK, because you don't see a Rockefeller. Okay. Now, where was I? Yeah. So here he was. The birth of U.S. Steel. He met with Rockefeller three minutes. The old man. This was the bedtime story for Nelson and David. When we were reading, my mother was reading me Mother Goose. This is what Rockefeller boys are being read. Okay, so that was it. That's why that driver was there. He's the go-between for this trafficking. You're not going to see a Rockefeller.
So
You'll
let's,
see him in the board. Go ahead.
so yeah, let's talk about Annika Lucas now.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because I know a little bit about. So
What
the
is
book,
this?
Quest
What
for
is it
Love,
on the
it's
screen,
about
Mark? Can you
her-
see this? Mark, is this on the
Yeah,
screen?
I can see you fine. I can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yep. So her book is about her life as a sex slave. She was sold into sex slavery by her mother in Belgium in, I believe, the 1970s, this period covered. I think she was maybe like 8 or 9 years old. And her story, I'm going to say, like, there's parts of it that are checking out. Like, she, one of the main abusers was convicted of child abduction and somehow only got 3 years in jail for this because of the corruption of the system. And according to Annika, all the politicians that were involved in the sex scandal. Some of the things that she saw, she complained about the food one day. So the next day they killed the child and made all the other children eat the child, the burned body of the child, and they made Annika watch. There's another story where she sees a young boy being chased across the yard. I don't know if he was, I want to guess he was like Indian or something like that, according to her. I could be wrong about that, I forget. But he was being chased and she heard shotgun blasts. And basically, they were chasing the child all over the property, trying to kill him, and they eventually caught up with him and murdered him. These are things that she all witnessed. She's got scars on her body that relate to the injuries that she claims she sustained. I believe ultimately, in the end, she was asked to kill another girl, and she was in a position where she knew that if she didn't kill this girl, they would have just tortured her and killed her in a slower, more painful way. And she kind of like just didn't know what to do, and ended up killing the girl and then trying to kill herself immediately afterwards. I think she stabbed herself and, had the vision, saw the white light, crossed over, and then, came back too and survived. So it's a very unique story. And yes, not in the book, but in later interviews that you can find on YouTube, she accuses David Rockefeller of sexually abusing her. She also accuses Evelyn Rothschild in England, saying that he physically abused her. And there was a part in that interview where somebody said something about sexual abuse, and she was like, no, he didn't sexually abuse me. His thing was physical punishment. He would torture her. And after his death, there were multiple cases of people that worked for him that accused him of rape and physical abuse. So that part checks out. The one thing I'm going to say about all this is anybody can tell a story, and she's, going to be attacked and has been attacked. One thing that I'd like to see her do, and I've seen her be a little bit defensive about people that are questioning her credibility, but I think it's a really important step for her to take. And I know it doesn't count in a courtroom, but I would love to see her go take a lie detector test and see her pass that thing. And that would give a hell of a lot more weight to her testimony. She's listening out there. I know it's something she's probably not thrilled about doing, but I'd love to see her do it.
Well, I've listened to her. She's had several testimonies on YouTube, and everything lines up.
It does.
Like she mentioned David Rockefeller, his apartment in New York City, his townhouse, which was on 65th Street.
Yeah.
His home in, up there in Maine, Seal Harbor, Maine. There, yeah, she's right about that. Also, his Pocantico. I just showed you the picture there. Hudson Pines. This one here. She was there, so she knew this stuff.
Right.
She knew this stuff.
Right.
And here's the thing. I think she's done more to help solve the Kennedy assassination than anybody. You know why? This is firsthand information.
Right.
She lived. Me and you were researchers.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, we report stuff that we find. That's it. We're not doing anything original.
Okay. So one of the problems I have in getting the truth to people is our educational system run by Rockefellers. They put these three people up as saints. They were robber barons, ruthless robber barons. Then they got caught in the breakup. I have got to apologize, Mark. What is going on? Am I hitting things? Ruthless robber barons Well, and then all of a sudden, oh, we gave all our money away to charity, and now we're just good deed doers. So the public bought that. Even intellectuals who should know better. And this is what happened. So when I go out to talk about the knee-jerk reaction from most people is, well, they're ready to crucify me, especially from certain circles,
Right.
like Protestants, Presbyterians. They're the first ones to go after me, big time, and because they identify with these people, and they're devil worshippers, but they don't know. They don't even know what the history books published by the Rockefellers. Remember, at the Kennedy crime scene, what was there? Books.
Right.
Okay, so McGraw-Hill was room 400 in the Texas school book. McGraw-Hill offices. Oh, by the way, where's their headquarters? Rockefeller Center, right across the street from what? Simon and Schuster, the biggest book publishers in the country, textbooks publishers. Okay, this is not coincidence. This is by design. Okay, where was I now? So yeah, she's done more to help solve the Kennedy assassination. So that's why I bought her book. Shame on me, I haven't read it yet, but I want to support her. You know,
It's
no, go ahead.
it's tough to read. It's difficult to digest. You know, I did it because I just wanted to see what she had to say, and I knew what it was going to get into, and there's some stuff in there I mean, I just said some of it, but it's just disgusting.
Another thing too, when you mentioned India from the country India.
Yeah.
Okay, see, this is what these people are doing. They're going around the world. They have influence in high places. They have well connected, and they're going into countries where you have a sector of the population is totally disenfranchised. And I'm sure over India, there's a lot of, orphans, sadly to say. And these predators, the Rockefellers, they'll swoop in and take these kids, okay, and move them internationally. And nobody's going to come looking for them. They're probably glad to get rid of them,
Yeah.
And this is where they have their way with these kids. And then if they're going to start eating human flesh, who are they going to eat?
Right.
See? And whatever perversions they're doing, see?
Right.
So what the Rockefellers are doing is they're providing potentially people of high positions any sick perversion, their pleasure, okay, they'll provide you with. That's what lures these people of high positions in.
Right.
'Cause
And with today's technology, how easy is it to get all that recorded? It's, you can buy stuff on Amazon to, record stuff like that.
Yeah.
Never mind what
I can't.
intelligence agencies have. It's completely out of control. A couple facts I just want to sprinkle in here about the case with David Rockefeller's driver. It was never brought to a criminal court. The document that Richard showed was a civil case, which was ultimately settled out of court. Rockefeller used their money to make it go away. And there was a grand jury with the Epstein case, everybody knows, in Florida. And Alexander Costa was the one investigating. There was a 60-count indictment on Epstein, and the grand jury they were trying to stop it. And the only people that had the power to stop this kind of grand jury would have been the Attorney General and the President, which would have been Alberto Gonzales and George W. Bush. So there's strong indication that it was the president that ultimately squashed this investigation. I don't know if that's a decided fact or not, but what the F is he doing blocking that case, right?
Exactly, because it involves their friends in high position. It's the same with the case of, I think I did mention it here, Washington, the D.C. madam. And she was found hanging. The D.C. madam here, I don't know if I got it here now, but you know the story about that.
Right.
See, what happened was, I happened to be watching Larry King one night, and who's on the show was chairman of the board. Shame for me, I don't have the notes in front of me, talking about, the big push is offshore drilling, because the price of oil was going up at the pump. So the big push now is offshore drilling in the coast of California. This is down around California, 10% owned by the Rockefellers, right? See, well, that would involve the Department of Interior, okay? Because the Department of Interior controls all the accessing of minerals and federal land and offshore drilling, which is a massive treasure trove, okay? And it's the most corrupt department. And this Jean, oh boy, I wish I could think. Paltry, thank you, Lord. Paltry was her name.
Mhm.
They found her hanging. She had a little black book, okay? And what came out in the media, what? Paltry, look it up, Paltry, DC Madam. And what came out in the media was that Standard Oil California, now Chevron, was holding these drug and sex parties. Okay, this was the same time when all this was coming out. There was investigation that Standard Oil California was holding sex and drug parties, and employees of the Department of Interior were attending. Okay, now this is the same time she's out there as a madam providing. I'm sure she was providing flesh for these orgies. Okay,
1993 to 2006.
Yeah. So this stuff was coming out, and then she gets found dead, hanging in her mother's backyard in Florida. Actually, it was in the tool shed back there.
Yeah.
Okay, and people were mentioned connected with George Bush 43. See, so you see this pattern of using, and this is what Jeffrey Epstein was all about, but he took it up to a real big. He had, that's serious money behind what he was doing. Right. You take property in Manhattan, mansions are worth $50, $60 million, and all you're doing is throwing parties. Why are you giving all these people these gifts? Giving them, well, all that stuff is expensive, right?
Right.
Giving them Dom Perignon champagne and jumbo shrimp and caviar and whatever pleasure they want, and no end in sight, just endless parties. Come on, this is a front. Now you think people would have more brains,
right,
to know that this is a. I tell you a story about Truman one time. Harry Truman was in the book, David McLaughlin's book, right? Truman. He was in a lobby of a hotel. Somebody came up to him and said, "Hey, there's a certain person up in one of the rooms, somebody of some importance, a man wants to see you." So he gives Truman the room number. Truman goes up there, knocks on the door. Who comes to the door? Some woman, sexy woman, scantily clothed. Truman just walked away. He knew what it was about. You know what I'm saying? We're people like Harry Truman these days. These people are a bunch of fish. They fall for his traps. They should know better. And this is such a big factor now what's going on in this siege on Iran. This is how huge it was. Well, it doesn't have to involve a lot of people. It only has to involve people of high magnitude.
Right.
See, one or two could change. So if you can basically, bring these people.
Yeah, I can see it fine. Yeah, it might be something with your computer, but I'm not seeing any flashes. Oh, I just lost you. All right, so we got lost Richard here. So we'll give him a minute to pop back on. Let me send him a quick text here. I'll try logging back. All right, well, while we're waiting for Richard here, we'll just take a minute and talk about, Richard's book, his main book, Clash of Dynasties, his belief about Nelson Rockefeller being behind the Kennedy assassination. That's Richard's personal belief. If you had to ask me, I'd say there's tons of credibility to that. It would it hold up in a court of law? I don't know. I think there's certainly a case at a minimum of obstruction of justice by Nelson Rockefeller in the JFK assassination. His activities on the Rockefeller Commission it was just complete BS. He lied his ass off, made up a bunch of stories, And if he were alive today, he would have to explain himself because pretty much everything that he put in that report was wrong. Um, and he was in a position of power. He was involved with the CIA either as a contract agent or on a special project. He was the founder of the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency of the Americas. As Richard said earlier, he was tied to Hoover. They were illegally wiretapping foreign dignitaries during the creation of the UN, and that connection goes back to, so it's all the way to the 1940s. But Nelson Rockefeller was very closely tied to three people very commonly brought up in the Kennedy assassination: Allen Dulles, the former deputy director of the Central Intelligence Agency, J. Edgar Hoover, and Lyndon Baines Johnson, secret relationship that Nelson Rockefeller had there. And they um, supported each other, and said that LBJ even recommended. Yeah, we got you back here. Talking about LBJ for a second here. Actually recommended that Nelson Rockefeller run for president against the Democratic candidate that LBJ was supposed to be supporting. So, look, the Rockefeller family has, many of the people. I'm sure they're great people. They got a couple of just really bad apples in there, and they've done tremendous damage to this country. So. We got Richard back here. I don't remember exactly where we left off. I know we were talking about, geez, I forgot what we were talking about.
Well, we were talking about the DC Madam,
Yes.
and then we were talking about, how this is a pattern here. And I think Jeffrey Epstein took it up to a level of perfection on behalf of David Rockefeller.
Yeah.
And like I said, who did Jeffrey Epstein call out? Not Bob Maxwell, not Mossad, not Israel. Who did he call? I called David Rockefeller his chauffeur.
Right.
And here they are right here, indicted. Indicted. Right here.
So while you're bringing that up, let's summarize real quick here. We got Kennedy investigating the Saud family for slavery, trying to put an end to it. There was all these articles about the sex crimes that were occurring, slave auctions for African Americans. And by the way, the African American community was making a big stink about this back in the 1960s. Can you imagine slavery in the 1960s? What you would think if you were African American. So there was a lot of outrage going on here. So Kennedy was pressuring the Sauds to stop all this, and this was a potential impact on Rockefeller business interests. Now we got the Franklin case in the 80s in Nebraska, taking kids from foster care and sending them to D.C., where they were supposedly sexually abused by politicians. And we're supposed to believe that these kids are making up stories and lying when we have this documented history of sex trafficking relating to DC and politicians. And then we have the madam, what was her name?
Paltry.
Paltry. We have her, and then we have Epstein, who is tied to the Rockefellers, admits meeting one of Rockefeller's drivers. And then we have an international sex case with Annika Lucas in Belgium, and she's accusing David Rockefeller of sexually abusing her. Are we supposed to believe all this is some type of effing coincidence here? It doesn't look like it. It looks absolutely disgusting and awful. And, at one point when, I'd have to admit that when I heard all this stuff about international sex trafficking and trafficking networks, I thought it was a little bit of, conspiracy nutcase stuff, because there are a lot of people out there that literally believe any conspiracy you put in front of them. There are people that are simple-minded that get trapped into stuff like that. But the more you look at this sex trafficking stuff, it's a real thing, and it's been going on for a very, very long time, and it hasn't stopped.
Well, there's no attempt to get to bring justice. It's all about the power elite having their way to basically rape the planet of its resources and wealth, like the Saudi states, all those states around the Persian Gulf, going back to the Red Line Agreement, all that. That was all drawn up by the Rockefellers and Winston Churchill. There was nobody from that part of the world even had a say in that process, except for that one guy. He was a Armenian. His name was Gulbenkian. He actually drew it. He actually took the paper and the red pencil and drew it. So Churchill and the Rockefellers are dividing up the Middle East. Churchill created Kuwait because the British wanted a port to get their oil out. That's all Kuwait was. Just like when the British set up Hong Kong so they could bring their opium in and out, or smuggle in their opium, and this all goes back to the forming of the CIA.
Right.
The Roosevelts and the Astors, America's leading opium dealers, drug smugglers into China. And that's how they made their fortunes. So if you got a CIA that's built on opium smuggling, I gotta say smuggling.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what is this any surprise that the CIA is carrying out? It's all backed by the power elite, the Rockefellers, that they're carrying out basic wholesale torture in these countries, and to keep these, all they are is puppet states, vassal states of the Rockefellers and the oil companies, so they could go in there. The Saudi family gets 98% of the nation's petroleum wealth. See, in Alaska, every citizen gets a check from the oil companies.
Right.
There, 98% of the people are ignored and then tortured if they speak out. See, and this profit goes to Western countries. It's shared by, we get cheaper oil. We get cheaper prices at the pump. So in some ways, we are benefiting from the torture. See, the problem is they don't ever let us. You can buy coffee or you can buy orange juice where there's verified good labor practices, but you can't go and buy a gallon of oil and say, how was this oil taken? Who did you rape and plunder to get this oil?
Right. Looking at your notes here, Richard, can you talk a little bit about Ghislaine Maxwell?
Well, Ghislaine Maxwell was, I think, the pimp for Jeffrey Epstein. She was bringing in these girls because it's easier to lure women in. Other women are better at luring in women, see.
And can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, well,
much better.
She was the pimp for Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
So it's easier for a woman to bring in other women, young women, see. It is for a strange male to do that. You see my point?
Yeah.
So she had to lure these young girls in.
Yep.
I'm sure she sweet talked them and gave them all kinds of promises. And her father, of course. Now that's an interesting connection.
Right.
To who? Her father. I hope I can find his document. But her father, his closest confidant, I got to recall these names now, was, his name was, Anthony Blinken.
Robert Maxwell?
Yeah, Robert Maxwell's closest confidant. I wish I had the notes in front of me. Was Anthony Blinken's father. Anthony Blinken was Secretary of State for Biden.
Right.
Before that, he was National Security Advisor to Vice President Biden. Remember, all national security advisors, we talked about this, is the go-between. Nelson Rockefeller set that up in the 1950s. That's why Kissinger held that post for many years. Every national security advisor is really the go-between between the White House and the Rockefellers. All right, it's a secret go-between. So Blinken had that job. But his father, his natural father, wish I can think of his name. But anyways, his natural father, no, let me take that back. His adopted father. Okay. Blinken's adopted father. Google this stuff. Blinken's adopted father, you Google it. Do an AI on it.
Okay.
Anthony Blinken's natural father, who, by the way, worked with his adopted father, worked with JFK.
Wow.
But his adopted father, because his mother divorced. The mother and father divorced, so he was really raised by his stepfather. I say adopted father.
Stepfather was Samuel Pissar, 1929 to 2015.
He was the top advisor to Maxwell, Bob Maxwell.
Wow, international lawyer and Holocaust survivor.
Yeah. And he was with JFK. He had some capacity with the UN as part of a team or something with the UN for JFK. And Saud was with the last person to see Robert Maxwell alive. He was Robert Maxwell's confidant. Now, Robert Maxwell, stole like $200 million from his employees' pension fund, and it was never reclaimed. So
Yeah.
all those people lost their pensions, you see. He was the last one to see Robert Maxwell, drowned in the ocean, right? By the side of his yacht.
Right.
But we don't know if it was murder. He fell.
Right.
Or jump. We don't know. Okay. Well, how many strange deaths have occurred in this story? One more.
Right.
Now, here's another story. I got to find it. Robert Maxwell, Anthony Blinken's natural father lived to be like 98. Who do you live next door to?
Who?
Henry Kissinger. He lived in an address, 435 East 52nd Street, which is River House, which was Henry Kissinger's famous address forever. But Anthony Blinken, yeah, that was the name, Blinken. It wasn't Anthony. Google that too.
It's Anthony.
Well, his natural father.
His natural father. Okay, give me 1 second. Hang on.
Good thing we're working as a team here.
Yeah.
It would be Blinken.
Was natural. Donald M. Blinken.
Donald Blinken. Now, Donald Blinken forever, look at this. I should have more light here. This is the 2019 Form 990 for the Nelson Rockefeller Foundation for Public Service. If you want to contribute to Nelson Rockefeller's foundation, it's tax deductible. It's a 501c3.
Yeah.
And who ran it for?
I'm sorry.
What?
So just to let everybody know, the 990, I believe that's a public form that all nonprofits have to file.
Yeah, because it's a 501c3.
Right.
Donald Blinken's natural father, Anthony Blinken's natural father, Don Blinken, forever was chairman of this foundation for Nelson Rockefeller. And where did he live? In the same building with Henry Kissinger. You see how it's always a network of Rockefeller agents and stuff?
Right.
If you want to contribute to Nelson Rockefeller's foundation, you can do it and get a tax write-off. This is what Nelson Rockefeller's grandfather on the mother's side, when they set up the Federal Reserve Bank, they passed the 16th Amendment to impose income tax unconstitutionally on the nation. Yeah.
So these
now,
people,
who are they all? So who's Robert Maxwell surrounded by? Rockefeller Agency. See, and it goes back what Epstein said. See, oh, well, David Rockefeller, whose name did he call out? David Rockefeller and his chauffeur.
right.
Come on.
Right. What? So it's the story behind the story. If you think about this too, I wanted to comment about this. This is almost like a private intelligence operation. So Epstein talks about this position with the Trilateral Commission and this nonprofit board. Isn't that really like a cover, right? Like an agent or a CIA case officer or whatever creates a cover, and they operate under that cover. So that is the cover. That's the reason for Epstein to be around Rockefeller. Right?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
What's really going on is what we all want to know about, and what could be
that's the cover.
Serious, disgusting crimes.
There was that YouTube video and I think you shared it with me, where David Rockefeller wanted to go see somebody, but then he made up this thing, that was the cover for his trip.
Yes.
You remember that video? And I'm sorry, I
Yeah, I
can't remember.
forget exactly what the trip
He
was.
was a CIA agent,
Oh wait,
and he couldn't understand.
was that when he went to Saigon? Yeah, he
Yeah,
went to. Yeah, it might
I
have been
forgot.
Saigon because he did go to Saigon during the war, and he. I think they
No,
tried.
this was later. This was a lot later. He went
Okay.
somewhere. I wish I could reform my memory, but it was that CIA agent who's been talking a little bit. He's got some YouTube videos out.
Oh, that asshole that's uh trying to say Israel was the guy spent 2 months with the CIA and he thinks the Israel was entirely behind the JFK assassination. That guy.
I'm not sure, but David Rockefeller went through this whole thing to make people think he was going somewhere
Yeah.
as the cover.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with his mission. And he says, no, he was told that was just a setup for him to, nothing suspicious, something totally innocent. That's why David Rockefeller went out there.
I wish I could remember
then
that
he meets
now.
with other people in secrets. That was what he was saying. And so that was just a cover for him to come out. And that's what they do. So if they have a meeting for the Trilateral Committee, they could meet there. Oh, this is trilateral business. Well, Jeffrey Epstein happens to be working for the Trilateral Committee. Yeah. And
So,
that's very significant. Of course, Trilateral Committee was started by David Rockefeller with the help of what? Brzezinski, okay, who was Secretary of State for Jimmy Carter. Brzezinski, there's a lot of history there. That's his daughter who's on television all the time. What's it, Coffee Joe or something they call it?
I want to bring up something that Epstein said there too in that interview where he talked about the Trilateral Commission and he made a comment about, people thinking it was this conspiracy thing and this like Illuminati thing. And I want people to understand that he's kind of right there. Like if you sat in on a Trilateral Commission meeting, if you were able to do that, you probably wouldn't see anything illegal. The way that they operate is a lot of those organizations, they're setting up the perceptions that they want to be seen in the media and so forth. So they prep these politicians and businessmen with certain ideas and they later bring them out. So it's more of a way of shaping opinion. I don't think that there is probably a conspiracy there somewhere behind it. But I think Epstein's kind of right that if you sat into one of these meetings, I don't think you'd be seeing any criminal activity. It's somewhere else where all that's happening. Right?
Well, all that stuff is really about control.
Right.
All they're doing is establishing power and control, which on the surface isn't necessarily illegal, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to effectuate worldwide monopolies in banking and oil and internationally in manufacturing and mining and all these things. That's what their ultimate aim is. Well, first of all, anything the Rockefellers do, it's designed to keep the Rockefellers as keeping the Rockefellers as sovereigns over the planet. That's ultimately what they're doing. That's ultimately what they're seeking. And the elected officials are just their puppets who are not around that long. See, like the Rockefellers were around now going on 150 years in the highest seats of power. See, how many presidents have come and gone in that period? See, and senators and, saying, so that's kind of what Epstein was saying.
Lots of them. Lots of them. Just looking over your notes here too to see I missed anything here. All free. The Profumo affair, you covered that a little bit earlier.
Yes, that's another Jeffrey Epstein thing. And the story, it brought down the PM of England.
Yeah.
Okay. And, he resigned by not running again. And it was the Astors, the opium dealers who set up CIA. If you read this book, it's the history of the CIA from its origins with the opium dealers, and it involved who? Nelson Rockefeller and his uncle, because don't forget, Nelson Rockefeller was the coordinator of the OCIAA. It's all evolved into the CIA. And well, this perfume, we talked about this in our last about these wealthy Americans marrying into British royalty, the Astors, Also, the most famous example was the marriage of Consuelo Vanderbilt to the ninth Duke of Marlborough. Also, the Kennedys. Kathleen Kennedy married into British royalty. She's got some kind of a title. Well, of course, he died in the war service, and she died in a plane crash with another Protestant elite. I can't think of his name now. And of course, the Kennedy family boycotted the wedding. I think Joe went there. He was the only one who went to the wedding. And not really because they were Protestants, but they agreed that the children born would be raised Protestants. In the Catholic world, you can marry a Protestant, but the kids got to be raised Catholic. That's what, that's why the family boycotted the wedding. They're very super faithful in their Catholic beliefs. But what I was trying to tell you, same with the Teapot Dome scandal, it involved both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, because America's richest families, the Roosevelts, the Astors, were married into British royalty. Well, who started the opium trade? The King of England. See how it all ties in?
Yeah.
Hasn't changed. So Lord Astor, I can't believe he was doing this on his own. He invited Profumo. Well, this guy owned a castle. Well, I won't call it a castle. It was a palace on the Thames River. 150 room. I think it was called Clavendine. Big, estate. And see, that's why they have to build these golden mouse traps. Because the average Joe, if I try to invite the King of England to my house, he's not going to come. But if I own a gilded palace, he might come, and they get set up. Well, they go there knowing they're going to get these things. Right. And he introduced Lord Astor. Okay, Lord and Lady Astor. Lord Astor, he introduced Profumo, who was this ties in with oil. He had Churchill's old job. Churchill was the oil minister for Great Britain. Okay, he was Lord High of the Admiralty, right? Churchill converted the British Navy from steam power to petroleum, and so this guy was in that same position. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm having all kinds of technical problems here. 1 minute it's this, now it's lighting. Okay, so I don't believe. So what Lord Astor did? He took Profumo to a swimming pool, and there was a young thing there swimming naked, and he introduced this Profumo, who was the Lord High of the Admiralty, right, in charge of supplying England with oil. Well, where'd that oil come from? Iran. See how it all ties in?
Right.
Okay, they wanted to blackmail this guy. And they immediately left the pool and had sex in the house. Now it comes out, this girl was also jumping in bed with this Russian attaché who was in England, some kind of a Russian attaché or something to the embassy or something. I'm not sure all the details. He was with the KGB general. The KGB, they have general ranks and stuff like that. And that's what really touched off the scandal. So it went, not only was it about inappropriate sex, but it was, this possibility of treason, of selling nuclear secrets to the Soviets. And that's what, of course, Macmillan was his name. He was the prime minister. He resigned by not running, seeking re-election. Now, I don't believe Lord Astor was doing this on his own. It had to be part of a greater scheme.
Right.
Probably run by the Rockefeller, because it involves oil, Iranian oil.
It's all tied together. Oil, sex trafficking. It's kind of crazy that this all has developed like this. And like I said, I'd like to see more from Annika. I'd love to have her on the show and chat. Love to hear what else she says, because I'm sure she's not said everything.
Maybe we could do it with three-way
Sure,
comment.
why not? Yeah. I've reached out to her on Instagram, no response. So I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't question the things she says.
Yeah.
I think she's right on. I've listened to her videos.
Look, I believe her. I just think that there's other people that are going to attack her. So I'm just saying, I think a lie detector test would put the nail in the coffin, and nobody would ever question her, period, if she did that.
Well, I think too, you have to look at it in the greater context of all this other stuff that was going on peripheral to what she's saying.
Yeah, that's
That,
there's a huge circumstantial case. Huge. There's no doubt about that.
I mean, here we have a case filed in court with David Rockefeller's driver. Okay, the girl was in David Rockefeller's home.
Right.
Okay, I'm sure it was settled out of court.
Right.
Okay, so Jeffrey Epstein said what? Oh, he introduced me to his colleague, his driver.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty incriminating.
And then she accuses David Rockefeller of sexual abuse. It ties it all in very
I
neatly.
mean, they're right in David Rockefeller's home
Right.
and his driver.
Yeah.
What could be more corroborate what she's saying?
Right. Yeah, and the way they put it in the news was a Rockefeller, you know, employee. They did not say that it was a driver, somebody that intimate with David.
Well, in this article, if you go on and read it, was his driver. Woman abused at David Rockefeller's home as child. Yeah, the chauffeur. Goes on. And it goes on. Yeah.
So I'm just looking up some stuff about the news coverage related to that. Yeah, I think originally it was kind of they tried to downplay it, but
Yeah, right here. The family chauffeur sexually abused her
Yeah.
as a child.
right,
She claims the family chauffeur sexually abused her as a child. In the leafy Westchester estate of Rockefeller, clan holds a dark, painful secret for one woman. It's where she claimed the family chauffeur secretly abused her as a child. Well, then Epstein said he was introduced by David Rockefeller to his chauffeur. Come on, it's got to be the same person.
geez,
Good.
here's another one. I didn't even realize this.
There's a lot out there.
Have you heard of this Dr. Reginald Archibald? He was a pediatric endocrinologist employed by the Rockefeller Institute, Rockefeller University Hospital.
Well,
Numerous
Jeffrey
former
Epstein,
let me finish here. Numerous former patients allege that Archibald sexually abused them as minors during purported medical examinations. Federal court records describe allegations involving decades of sexual abuse of children and allowed negligent hiring, supervision, retention claims against Rockefeller continue.
and he's on the what? The Rockefeller University, right?
Right.
He was, okay, who's on the board? What year was that? Jeffrey Epstein.
Right. And
Sure.
yes. So they put another sexual offender.
Exactly. So what's Jeffrey Epstein going to do? Just whitewash it all, right? They're both
Right.
criminals.
Right.
One criminal covers. This is what when they set up these boards. That's what it's about. It's not about a text instrument calculator. It's about the rubber stamps, and they're going to turn their eyes away from the truth. That's what it's all about. No different than the Warren Commission.
Right.
I think I did encounter that. Read that. That we should have had that on the list. That's good. And those names, like what was the name? Reginald Archibald.
Reginald Archibald, 1910 from 2007, specialized in childhood growth and development and treated children with conditions involving short stature, delayed puberty, growth disorders, and endocrine problems. Worked at the.
See, here's what a lot of my research is run by family connections. Now, you see the name Reginald,
Yeah.
okay, Archibald,
Yeah.
okay, the Roosevelts married in with the Archibalds, and the Reginald's married in with the Vanderbilts.
Huh. Wow.
You see, and this is what they were doing. These wealthy, it was all nepotistic. These wealthy families were on the boards of these hospitals, right? And their kids or next of kin, see, or close families. They were putting these people, sending them to the best schools, and becoming doctors, and then being on the boards of these institutions. And this all ties to what? MK Ultra.
So listen to this. The lawsuit also alleged that Archibald photographed children naked and sexually exploitative photographs were kept on Rockefeller property. Those latter assertions are allegations from litigations rather than findings. I would state independently as proven facts. Rockefeller eventually commissioned an investigation. Which Rockefeller? I don't know. Rockefeller
It had to
hired,
be David.
yeah, they hired Debevoise and Plimpton to investigate Archibald. Um, and they did find that they
Yeah.
determined that he did sexually abuse children.
Okay, so you have a pattern here of sexual
Yeah.
abuse on
Yeah.
Rockefeller property. Who's in the middle? Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, so all that corroborates her story, and she's got firsthand
Right.
account. So was there a doubt? But those names you see, like Reginald, see back in the day, these wealthy people, all their names were they would always adapt last names of other like Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Okay, were all last names of families that these people were related to. That's why Reginald probably was the Reginald family, married the Vanderbilts, and Archibald's married, and of course there's different spellings, but the Archibald's married in with the Roosevelts. Okay, well here they are, the opium dealers, the Delanos, the Roosevelts, and the Astors. It's built on a criminal empire to begin with.
Right. So listen to this. One of the questions here is the particularly troubling question. It says is did David Rockefeller know earlier? Because there's evidence that there was decades of history here, and that they should have known the failings that were going on with the system there. And there's been litigation as recently as 2025 still related to this case.
Yeah. They know.
Yeah.
How would they not know? That's like Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger not knowing about the Watergate beforehand. Everybody, 60 people were indicted in connection with Watergate. Oh, but Kissinger and Nixon are totally innocent. They didn't know anything about it. Come on. They're running these things. They're the overlords of it. It's their institutions. They put together the board of directors. They hire all these doctors.
Listen to this. There was a Manhattan District Attorney investigation into Archibald around 1960 to 1961, including a grand jury consideration, yet he apparently was not prosecuted and continued having access to children for decades afterwards.
Yes.
How the hell would David Rockefeller not know that happened in 1960, 1961?
Exactly. Yeah, great job you're doing there.
Yeah. There is no chance in hell he didn't know that.
And then they let it continue.
Right. It says they can trace what Rockefeller officials knew about Archibald in 1960 and 1961, and what the Manhattan DA knew, what the grand jury did, and which Rockefeller executives were running the institutions at the time.
Does it mention the name Detlev, Detlev, Bronk, Bronk?
So far, no, but this I just prompted it again here, so let's take a look.
I just wonder what years those were. Detlev Bronk he was on, this book. He was one of the guys on this book, and he ran the Rockefeller Institute for the Rockefellers. Detlev Bronk, the Rockefeller panel. His name is on the back of his book. Oh, he was on the it's in his books right here. He was he was the board of trustees. 10 people on the board of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, right?
Yeah.
8 of them are Rockefellers. 2 are non-Rockefellers. Detlev Bronk, who ran the Rockefeller Institute, and Wallace Harrison, who was Nelson Rockefeller's personal architect and co-coordinator when Nelson Rockefeller was head of the OCIAA. He had to have a role in the case. He had to be an insider on the Kennedy assassination. No way. That guy had to be involved.
So here's a great question. Have you ever heard of, can you think of a family name like the Rockefellers that's ever been, whether you want to say it, accused, tied to, or surrounded by so many sexual abuse allegations? Can you think of anybody that's even close to that? I can't.
No.
Yeah.
You know, you have all the money in the world. Certain things supposedly you can't buy, you know, but they figure out ways to buy it. They go into foreign countries. They victimize children, and they have the position to cover it all up. No different than Kennedy assassination, of course. They're in a position to cover it, even if they get caught, and they have that plausible denial. And even then, when you try to catch them, they continue with it.
So
See,
more
it's like we discussed.
Yeah.
They will spend $1 billion to take out one person.
right.
Okay, because that one person could be more effective than a missile weapon system. Because if you take out the right person in power in this country and the world, it could change the course of humanity for decades to come.
Right.
Best case, JFK.
Of course.
And you could probably add his brother to that too.
Yep.
You see why they'll go to no limits?
Right.
And it's the same with MK Ultra and all that. You know, which was Agile was part of MK Ultra. See, Agile was basically a spear tip of $1 billion blacked out weapon system.
So listen to this, more stuff here about this. Did you say Debevoise?
Detlev, Detlev, Bronk, Bronk, probably
no,
more in the 50s.
This is a different name. But what this is saying is blah, blah, blah. The case was dismissed. The Debevoise investigation in 2019 concluded that the president of the Rockefeller Institute at the time was made aware of the investigation in 1960-1961. That president was Dr. Detlev W. Bronk.
There it is.
Bingo.
What I tell you?
Who headed the Rockefeller Institute from 1953 to 1968. Rockefeller
And he was part of this.
Yeah. The Rockefeller.
And this was the
panel
blueprint
report.
for the Rockefeller domination of the planet, mid-50s.
Right.
And so many of these names connected to JFK assassination. See what I'm trying to tell you? See, the Rockefellers, you're not going to see a Rockefeller. They work through a list of agents, okay, who they meet maybe once, and then they give them marching orders.
Yeah.
And those are the people you got to follow. And if their names came up, they're in the pay of the Rockefellers. Kissinger obviously the most avid, but then Brzezinski and now can't even pronounce it. Detlev Bronk ran the institution. See, these people like Jeffrey Epstein, they bring these people in because they're criminals.
Yeah.
See, and they're going to continue their criminal activity because these people are going to turn their eyes away.
Right.
No different than Warren Commission. Earl Warren, Lyndon Johnson had them totally blackmailed with Hoover's files. So that's what they're trying to do. Let's get another Hoover going here so we can build all this dirt on people, and then they can't threaten them.
Right.
See, if they got dirt on a DA or dirt on a president or dirt on a United States senator, it makes it hard to prosecute. Because then the party comes in and defends them.
There's another name here related to Bronk, Dr. Macklin McCarty.
You know, I've studied these Rockefellers for 42 years. You'll never get the end of their outer. You'll never reach the end of their the outer limits of this Rockefeller universe. It's every day it's something new comes up. I didn't know why, and it all just fits in beautiful.
So this guy, McCarty, received several complaints about Archibald's genital examinations during the 60 to 1974 tenure. So this guy was getting reports for 13, 14 years after the original charges. And he was a employee of this Rockefeller organization. And
See, here's the
practiced
thing.
at Rockefeller from 1940 to 46 and 48 to 82. This means the grand jury investigation occurred 21 years before he stopped treating patients at Rockefeller.
Here's the thing. This lady here, instead of it proves the corruptness of our society. People are afraid of the Rockefellers. And even me, with my research in years, and I've seen it. And we've had this discussion. As soon as you mention that R word, that Rockefeller word, they walk away from you.
Yeah. Well, particularly the biggest wimp of them all, Oliver Stone. He knows everything we're talking about, and he's known it since he came out with the movie JFK, the original one, and he put out that story, which everybody thought he was great for, because it did do some things for the investigation and push it forward and everything, but he knew the truth all the way back in 1993, and he didn't have the balls to talk about it.
Well, you notice he never calls out names.
Right.
And then he started a petition wants the government to open another investigation. Well, how many times does he want to be lied to? Government's tried that multiple times, failed. You want one more failure? And
Right.
Who signed the petition? David Rockefeller's daughter.
Really?
Yeah, that's how ridiculous it is. You think he'd be smart enough to know better?
Yeah. Is that the one that not Abby?
I forgot who it is, but it might be.
Yeah.
So much to remember here. It's such a vast world with these Rockefellers.
Right.
You know what I found out too?
What?
I have a list of people who died suspiciously close to the JFK assassination. I've just added another name to the list.
Okay.
Edward Hooker.
Oh, wow.
Edward Hooker died March 29th, apparently apparently from a heart attack, 1967. I said, that rings a bell.
I couldn't hear that.
David Fury died
Yeah.
February 22nd, 1967.
And when did Hooker die?
A little over 30 days later.
Wow.
He died on March 29th.
Yeah.
At home, apparently from a heart attack. David Fury died at home, apparently from a cerebral hemorrhage. Now, he was, Ed Hooker was well mentioned in Warren Commission died. Ed Hooker was George Marinsky's business partner. Okay. George Marinsky was Oswald's closest associate in the days leading up to the JFK assassination. And Ed Hooker introduced George Herbert Walker Bush to George Marinsky's. And I believe George Herbert Bush was photographed in Dealey Plaza. Although they say it's not him. I know no doubt in my mind it's him.
Well, I'm mixed on that one, and here's why. The CIA was very good at putting doubles in places, and there's a chance that they intentionally put somebody there that was a spitting image of them for blackmail purposes. It's just a speculation that I have, not certain of it. Because if you think about it, like how stupid could you be to be right there on the spot? Either way, he would have been, whether it was him or somebody else, it was a setup to have him there, in my opinion, to later kind of like, the suspicion that he was involved, but, the best way to keep a conspiracy a secret is to get dirt on your fellow conspirators, right?
Yeah, well, it's still, you could be right, but I'm still saying it's kind of suspicious.
It's super suspicious.
Suspicious.
But what's also interesting, though, is multiple cases of this duplicate stuff. I mean, there's rumors of a duplicate Oswald. I don't know if I believe that. There's guys that look exactly like E. Howard Hunt. Looks like one of the tramps, but it's probably not him. Woody Harrelson's father looks like one of the tramps, but, photo experts say probably not. So,
well, I think it was Hunt.
Yeah.
And I think it was Frank Sturgis. Now, the guy they think was Harrelson, I'm going to tell you, it wasn't Harrelson.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to tell you why, but I don't want to get into some other time we'll do a show about the three tramps. I got their pictures over there. But the guy they don't identify is, I believe, Gary Patrick Hemming. Who was a soldier.
I know that name.
He was a soldier of fortune in the Bay of Pigs. He had a big history with the CIA and Bay of Pigs, as Frank Sturgis. These guys are trained assassins. They have a big history, military history and everything. Seen some real tough fighting in World War II and everything. And it also ties in with the testimony of Maria Lorenz, who identified him, Gary Patrick Henry. The only thing that doesn't fit is supposedly he was very tall, where this guy is not tall.
Right.
But I think a lot of the double Oswald, I don't go with any of the double stuff because I think the double Oswald stuff, I'm not going to go there, but I'm going to tell you why.
Right.
What happened with a lot of the double Oswald stuff was when Kennedy was shot, there was like maybe a couple hours of truth.
Right.
Then after that, everything had to be a cover up. Johnson was in the White House. Okay, now no more conspiracy talk. Oswald did it alone. And he fired 3 shots. That was going to be the story. Okay. Well, what happened was people came along and said, "Oh, I saw Oswald there." Well, if it didn't go along with the narrative of the Warren Commission and the FBI, so they had, oh no, that wasn't Oswald. See, so that's kind of what created this thing about the double identity theories and stuff, you know? So Oswald probably was there, just that the Warren Commission said, no, he wasn't there. And now they got a guy out there, I'm not going to mention his name, there's a double Jack Ruby and a double Oswald's mother. So
Right.
it's like, you know, that's why I don't get into the double theories too much.
Yeah, and it's all trivial to the more important
It is trivial.
stuff.
It's true.
As we're
I want to go after the top guy, the Rockefellers,
Right.
who gave the order. We'll never know every detail of the JFK assassination.
Right. Good stuff, Richard. Anything else you wanted to add?
I got another thing I found out.
Okay, please.
Michael Payne
Yeah.
is a Cabot. Henry Cabot Lodge.
Yeah.
I believe he was. Was he JFK? Well, JFK beat him in the Senate, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Lodge has got slapped 3 times in the face. JFK beat him in the Senate, took a Senate seat in Massachusetts, and then his son ran for the seat in Ted Kennedy beat him. And then Henry Cabot Lodge ran as Vice President Richard Nixon, and they got defeated. Well, Cabot's, I just learned this, were major shareholders in the United Fruit Company, famously identified with Cuba and their land acquisitions in Latin America and Cuba. You know, the United Fruit Company originally was the Boston Fruit Company.
Did
And
not
these
know that.
Cabots, along with this group of Boston Brahmins, okay, which would include the Bundy family. The Bundy family's mother was a Putman. Putmans were prominent Boston Brahmins, were major shareholders in the United Fruit Company, originally a Boston Fruit Company. A huge history there. Now there's people, that's motives there. And their land acquisitions, which, you know, they lost to they lost to a revolution. Those are major motives there. And of course, then you go into the Boston Brahmins that are opium smuggling with the Forbes. He was a Forbes. So Michael Payne was a Forbes. His mother was a Cabot, a Forbes. She married a Lyman Payne. All 4 of those people are Boston Brahmins. All 4 of those families. And the Bundys were Brahmins, Boston Brahmins through the Putman family, which are hugely Boston Brahmins, prominent Boston Brahmin family. Real interesting stuff, and also supplies motives and connections. And who worked with Michael Payne at Bell Helicopter? Jeffrey Rockefeller. And don't forget, the Paynes provided Oswald with a getaway car. They provided him with he lived there at their home while he stayed overnight, and the eve of the Kennedy assassination, and stored a rifle there. And they got him the job. The Paynes got Oswald's job at the school book depository.
Right.
This is all super good stuff.
That is awesome. More on this Bronk guy, by the way.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Bronk.
Yeah, they have documentation inside, of all places, the Rockefeller Archive Center. They identify the specific collection, record group 303 period U period. The catalog confirms this collection, and it's important because it says Debevoise, the law firm, says its investigators reviewed not merely personal record, but Archibald's available correspondence, historical Rockefeller University hospital documents, call logs, and meeting minutes. In other words, Rockefeller still had contemporaneous institutional documentation when Debevoise conducted this investigation. And the most prominent material would have been October 1960 to February 1961. Obviously, it states that not only was Rockefeller a trustee, he was a chairman of the board of trustees for the Rockefeller Institute, and that David joined in 1940, succeeded his father as chairman in 1950. So the leadership structure at the precise time of the investigation was David Rockefeller, chairman of the board, Detlef Bronk, president of the Rockefeller Institute, Macklin McCarty, physician-in-chief of the Rockefeller Hospital.
It's you're adding a lot more to what I've been trying to tell people. And I'll tell you another thing: the Rockefeller Institute, according to writers, boy, well, I got the book right here. You know the book.
Yeah.
Colby and Dennett, right? Said that when they were trying to assassinate Castro, they were using botulinum pills, poison.
Mhm.
Now, I mentioned Maria Lorenz, right? Marita Lorenz. Well, she was a femme fatale.
Right.
She was Castro's scorned lover and mother of the son. Castro had a son with her. Okay, that's why they used it, because she was close to Castro. Well, that poison pill, according to these guys, these two, I mean, men and women, co-authors, they were super researchers. They said that poison came out of the Rockefeller Institute, and this would have been right about that time when these people were in charge. See?
Yeah.
And that ties to the testimony of Maria Lorenz, which I told you she mentioned the name of Gary Patrick Hemming and Frank Sturgis. Of course, Sturgis is famous with Watergate. And we're going to talk, too. We got to do a show about E. Howard Hunt's deathbed confession.
Sure.
And we got that today, but another show, that would be a good to get into, and how I always look at things, I frame it within a perspective of the Rockefellers, where people don't know about the Rockefellers. See, so they don't see how it fits. Where I
Right.
do know. See, Detlef Block. See, I do see how it all fits.
Yeah.
So I can frame this in the greater Rockefeller perspective, and we'll show you how his testimony will fit with my theories. And nobody would notice, because not many people, the trouble is most Kennedy assassination investigators don't know anything about the Rockefellers.
Right.
See? And actually, most of the people who are curious about the Rockefellers are more concerned about, the one world order and the, Klaus Schwab and the, the World Economic Forum. And all. They come into the Rockefellers at that end, not the Kennedy assassination. And they're the ones that really know more about the Rockefellers.
And by the way, another guy tied to Oliver Stone, James D'Ingenio, has started to, how do I say, dance a little bit on this Rockefeller issue, but he won't go much further than that.
No, they're afraid.
It's like, but it's interesting that he's a Stone guy, and he's kind of sort of mentioning it in reference to the JFK assassination without directly accusing the Rockefellers. But I think he's still obviously not saying everything that he knows, but it's interesting that he started to dance around the topic.
Well, there's a YouTube creator out there. I think it's called Eyes Wide Open.
Yeah.
He started to bring up the Rockefellers. He did a YouTube video on JFK and the CIA, and he brought up the Rockefellers multiple times and how these people were all connected to the Rockefellers. Not coming out and saying the Rockefellers gave the order, but what you're doing and what I'm doing, it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And we've discussed this. How many people kind of know about the Rockefellers, but then they just walk away from this whole story? I experienced it firsthand with Bar McClellan. I wrote the book why LBJ killed JFK, which was a good book. I learned from it. But as soon as I mentioned the R word, he wanted nothing to do with me.
You spoke to him?
Email.
Okay. Yeah. So my impression of him is CIA asset.
I wouldn't doubt it.
And because if you look at his book, there's a lot of good stuff on the pre-JFK LBJ stuff, like all of his previous shit. But when it gets to the JFK stuff, it turns into fantasy land and speculation. And the CIA is not mentioned a single time in the book. Well, isn't that awfully suspicious? we got a guy researching LBJ and trying to throw him under the bus, which, yeah, sure, he probably was involved in one way, shape, or form, but you're also not mentioning the CIA, which is a obvious tie to the assassination. So, you know, who wrote your check?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and these books, I mean, what you're saying is right, but you still can glean things out of those books that
Correct.
kind of fit it. You know, it's like, yeah, this fits. You know, but I know what to weed out. We both do. We know what to weed out. What to. Oh, this is a relic.
And then,
This is a gem. We need to.
yeah, and the only way we're able to do that is because with, you know, me, let me see, 50, 39, 40 years for me, and and more than that for you,
Mhm.
studying it. You know, you can't determine those, you can't weed out that information without the background. So good stuff. I got to run, Richard. I got a meeting at 1:30. I got to start preparing for and drive a half hour for. So this has been really good stuff. Um, and great episode. I'll do some editing and get this posted out there.
Yeah, no end in sight. There's so much.
Yeah.
We can go on and on and on.
Yeah. All
I
right,
might
man.
even consider a show about Frank Sinatra's being. It might bring in some audience. I'm seeing more and more that Frank Sinatra was at least in On the Secret. If he had a role, I don't know. I won't go out, but I'll go on record now that he was in On the Secret. I
Yeah.
learned things
Interesting.
very much. So you'll see how he connects everybody who significantly connects to the story. And he was also in room 5600. I got to see what date he was in there. How many people can claim they were in room 5600? Frank
Wait, what's
Sinatra,
5600?
the Rockefeller family office.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
it was back in back in the day. I think they vacated it now.
Right.
David died. They got taken over by the brokerage firm. Well, Eugene Meyer, Watergate.
Yeah.
Lazard
Got it.
took it over. See how it all spins around with the Rockefellers. Never ends.
Never.
But we know about the Rockefellers. Other people don't know. So they get knee-jerk reactions. Oh, that's crazy.
Right.
Well, why don't you hear us out?
Exactly.
All right.
Have a good one,
Everyone-
Richard. Thank you again. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.